ChatGPT have just launched an app store. This is a huge moment for the AI industry, and if you are a brand, then you have a potential opportunity to reach over 800 million monthly ChatGPT users, which is a number that is rising every single week. I believe this could be as big as the App Store in terms of distribution and access to users directly within their workflows. This is the Ghost Wire. That is the name that we've got for it at the moment. It is a weekly update on everything that is happening in AI. We have a lot of interesting conversations here at Ghost Team, and we are working at the frontier, so we aim to share those with you. And this week we are going to be focusing on apps inside ChatGPT. We have actually built an app that turns any tweet into a nicely formatted gradient tweet, and you can create that directly after you've created a post within ChatGPT. So we think an interesting use case, and what we want to share is not only the app, but our experience with developing it so that you can learn on how best to build apps inside ChatGPT. We're also going to be talking about OpenAI Atlas browser and what we know so far. And then beyond that, we're going to talk about the distribution opportunity and the ecosystem that OpenAI is creating, and in fact, its comparison in terms of some similarities, some differences to the iPhone and the App Store. With that said, let's dive in. Okay, so this is our second app build. Actually, last week we built Fiverr for ChatGPT. So in short, what you could do is, let's take a legal contract. You could draft a legal contract, then call in our app ChatGig, and then it will immediately bring up a place where you can put up a request to get in freelancers to finish that contract for you. So a great use case and example of how you can just bring these apps into specific workflows that are already happening. And today we're building app 2. And our aim with this is really just to build these early use cases in the ecosystem and be at the edge of this technology, and really just share what we're building and help the wider ecosystem to understand how to build these apps, and really just be at the edge of what OpenAI are doing and the potential distribution advantage of being part of this ecosystem. And we have a community where there's lots of people building applications in ChatGPT. So if you are interested in building applications for your business, or being with other developers to learn, or just general builders to learn from them about how they're building, including, joining us in there, there'll be a link in the comments. You can join the community. And I think we can just get straight into it. Vince, what's the app we're building today?
This week we built, we're calling it Gradient Tweet App, or MCP. And we were inspired by this visual, which I think we all recognize from Twitter, but also even LinkedIn. Essentially taking a tweet and giving it a nice background, which makes it pop a lot more. So very common. We know there's great tools out there that actually make this very easy, but we thought it was quite interesting to try to bring this into the ChatGPT UI natively with an app, because as we kind of explore this thesis of LLMs becoming kind of an everything app, let's say kind of like a WeChat type, where you can get a lot of workflows more and more into LLM and chat interfaces. It could make sense then to bring in fixed templates. And this is an illustrative example that we all recognize of a fixed template, but it really scratches the surface. And we'll talk about that more in a moment. But let's first show what we've built. So let's go into ChatGPT. And
By the way, quickly, sorry to interrupt. What screen are you filming on? And is there, because it's quite wide.
yeah, it's my bigger screen. So if I do this
If you can, yeah,
right here,
see the other one, because then I'm thinking like proportionally when I edit it, it might look all.
yeah, I think I now made it so it's perfect, right? Like right here. Doesn't it look right?
It's more just like it looks on my screen more like, maybe it's fine. It's hard to tell. Like,
Now it's on my smaller screen, but I think it's exactly the same.
yeah, it looks the exact same. Okay, cool.
Do I restart anything?
No, you were just moving into like dev mode.
So you have to be in dev mode to work with custom apps at this point in time. And quick reminder, you just go into settings, you go into apps and connectors, and advanced settings, and you ensure dev mode is on. This is not available for free accounts. I think you have to have I think it's Plus subscription. We're going to go ahead and create a new connector. We're going to call it the Gradient Tweet MCP, create tweets with gradient backgrounds, and put in the MCP URL, which we will share with you. And I also need to put in a correct URL. Let me make sure that this has the HTTP. And we're going to go ahead and make sure authentication is on OAuth. And I'll talk about why that's important right now. So it's going to begin importing or connecting to the server. And you can see it actually redirected us to our MCP server, and it loaded a bit of a front-end app where it's inviting us to sign in with X. I'm gonna quickly do this. I'm gonna authorize, and we're gonna go back, and we're gonna see there was a success, and now we're back in ChatGPT, and we're now going to be connected. I want to take a quick moment and explain what is happening behind the scenes. So when you're trying to create a tweet like what we just showed, we actually need to know what the X account is of the user. Um, ChatGPT has an OAuth, so this allows our MCP to know through OAuth, okay, that this is me, Vincent McLeese, on a personal account. But then we also need to know what is that user's Twitter account. So we then created a little app that invites the user to also connect their Twitter, and our server then connects the two. So that's what you just saw with that page where I authenticated Twitter, and it then redirected me back to ChatGPT. So I'll go ahead and go back. And you can see there was a successful connection. And you can see there's an action, get my profile, get the authenticated user's profile information. So we actually know that this is me, Vincent McLeese, as a ChatGPT user, and by extension, also the Twitter user.
Mm. And that's important, right? Because when you think about the potential applications that you can build, there's obviously lots of examples where you might want to integrate with different people's, you know, OAuths or existing profiles they have on other accounts. So, that same principle you can apply to a lot of different applications, and I think it'll be, yeah, used in a lot because effectively you just need to integrate with the other apps that are being used in some form.
So you can see I now asked it to create a gradient tweet, and it creates an example. This is editable, so we can change the gradients, you can change the colors, it has some presets. You can pick a color, so you can even kind of use your profile image if you'd like. And this is responsive for anywhere on the page, so if you want to use, uh, ChatGPT's black, whatever, you can do that. I picked the white. And then once you're happy, how do we get it out of ChatGPT? There's two ways. You can just download it, but first I'm going to quickly show you sharing it to X. So with this button, we actually will take this, which isn't an image, it's HTML, and turn this into an image and save it to our server in a way that's optimized for sharing on social platforms with Open Graph tags. So it takes a moment because we're going to send this to our server, and it's going to ask us if we want to open an external link. And there's a little bug. This doesn't load right away, but if you do it a few times, it is going to load at one more time. There we go. So we have our gradient tweet. You can also just download.
And what happens when you post that? So like is that link gonna appear in the tweet?
That's the way Twitter works with the Open Graph. You can also, the other option is, I just save the image here, put it on my computer, and then you can just, open an image. So that's the two options. Ideally, you'd have a much shorter link, right? So this is the Gradient Tweet app, and the idea is, you come up with cool little quotes or something you want to share, and then you very quickly, without leaving ChatGPT, are able to create assets, templates, and it almost reminds me a little bit of like a Claude skill, right? So where we're making our LLM smart and personalized to create templates or outputs that are predictable and usually would require a lot of work, right? If you want to create something like this manually, you'd either have to go into Canva, create a gradient, or you'd have a Figma template, and then you'd need to paste it in. Now it's a command, right? And you can imagine even with, the presets, you have it saved for something of your liking. But I think, like I said, this really scratches the surface of what would be possible. When you think of all kinds of workflows and jobs that require repetitive asset creation, you could really think like, for instance, real estate agents, right? They're constantly creating these prospectuses on new listings and houses, and these are multiple page documents, but they follow a very fixed template. So imagine like a real estate prospectus MCP that you activate, and essentially it summarizes pictures you've put into an LLM, and I kind of Google what they kind of look like something like this. Pictures, maybe a conversation with the seller that you just put in, and audio it transcribes. You add more details that you find interesting. You obviously need to put in like functional information like address and these kinds of details, and then you could have the MCP absorb all that information and put it into your unique brand's template. And this is something that can be done very efficiently, and it just outputs PDF, right? So it really can start to replace things like like design studios or even Canva, which is a great place to kind of create things easily from scratch and move things around. But as soon as you have something fixed and you really just kind of want to process it, an MCP like this really starts to make a lot of sense.
Yeah, totally. And what I quite like about the use case going back into ChatGPT, if you open it up, I think going back into ChatGPT, the reason why it's interesting is because you're doing these things within a flow. So, for example, a lot of people are making content already within ChatGPT. And so when they then are already there, you can then just very quickly turn the tweet that you've just mentioned, into an asset. And so it's about creating applications that consistently flow within people's workflows. So that's why this is interesting. And so what one Vincent, like one thing is, let's go. I made a comment on the authentication, which I think is important. Otherwise, people aren't going to understand why it's interesting. So we need to go back and like comment on that. And then secondly, and I could say, um, also, I had a question. A lot of people actually use this for not their own tweets, but for other people's tweets. So an ideal flow you'd want would be, I could like have a link to a tweet, and then it could actually go through and take that person's tweet and put that into the graphic. Is that something it can do?
Well, we'd have to scrape that tweet, right? So it would just mean one more step. But yeah, absolutely, you could just absorb information. You would send that tweet's URL to the server, and the server can just scrape that tweet and put it in just like we're doing now with kind of native in the chat.
Awesome. Yeah, I think that would be really cool because that's typically what happens is, people are commenting on like another person's tweet. And so it would be cool to be able to kind of take their asset and share that. And basically all you need to do, which is an amazing workflow, is just share the link, say cool graphic tweet, and then bam, you've got your image with zero work. And you can customize it kind of how you want already in your workflow. And then what you could say, for example, is like, take this link and then make a funny like post about it as well. I don't know if you could potentially do both those use cases, but
I
that
think
could
in
be quite
general,
cool.
if you have a clear social media workflow, right, then why not have kind of a personal connector or assistant that just turns content into the outputs that you want to post?
Definitely share them. This is exactly the kind of use cases to start thinking about. And some are going to be existing applications that are effectively like web browsers or apps, companies that already have kind of strong footing. Fiverr, for example, could launch a similar app, but there's going to be total new white space that is there for new applications to be developed around the way that people are using LLMs, which is a new way of working, really. So that's a little overview of the demo. I think there's also a couple of other areas that we wanted to look into and just chat about, because I think it's interesting as developments for OpenAI's ecosystem and generally just like why these apps are interesting. So um, OpenAI just launched Atlas at the time of recording. I think this is going to come out about a week later, so we'll have seen the developments. But effectively, what's happened is OpenAI have released their own browser. So think Chrome, and they've actually built it on Chromium, which is the open standard for Chrome, what the open standard that Chrome has for building browsers and browser capabilities. I think Dia by Arc and maybe even Comet, I think all these big agentic browsers have launched it. And in short, what you can do is basically use it for kind of using ChatGPT within the way that you would typically search, but it also has agentic capabilities. If you've ever seen Dia, maybe I can just bring up ChatGPT Atlas while I'm talking about this.
Do you know if connectors and MCPs will be available inside Atlas?
I don't, but we should talk about that in a second. And at the moment, it's actually only on Mac OS, and yeah, you have sort of this like standard interface where you can prompt, and so that will then bring up almost a descriptive answer, but then it will also bring up a sort of link search if that's what you want. And I can actually show you here. So you've got these like couple of different modes, and then if you wanted to search something like Google,
I think you're sharing the wrong
um,
tab, Elliot. Yeah.
and I can actually show you here. So you've got these different modes. These are sort of just examples of what it can do. But effectively, this is your sort of your base search, and you'll either be able to put in a URL. So like if I'm putting a URL like this, it will go straight to that link. But then if you ask a general query, like it's going to pop up both this as sort of a AI based search piece, but then it's also going to allow you to sort of search more generally. And it's similar to like Google, right? But it's native with OpenAI. And then obviously you can use the full agent mode, which is a strong capability. And then I believe you have this little they also have it where you can sort of query. I believe, I'm not even sure how. I think maybe just below here, you can basically query the actual content that you see on your screen. So like analyze this web page. I'm not sure if it does it like that. No, I'd have to take a look, but it's similar to Dia, for example, which is what I'm in right now. If you have a browser here, you can click chat and then I can query that window. So like analyze this page. And so definitely what I'm recognizing is they've sort of come second to this game, and they have actually copied a little bit some of the features that are in Dia, some of the features that are in Comet. And I'm nonetheless very interested by this release, and I think it's important for this conversation because it's clear ChatGPT are trying to own the operating system, or OpenAI are trying to look at the operating system. And right now, they obviously are just an application that sits within Chrome and or whatever browser you're using. Yeah, there we go. Ask ChatGPT, you had that side image there, so it's kind of picking up, and you can see how close it is to Dia. And I think it's interesting because many people will use this. If you go to ChatGPT now, if you go to ChatGPT now, I'm here. You can see the distribution advantages they have by just putting it there, right? That gets about 800 million monthly active users to see this new browser. And so you soon live in a world where they own the operating system, which is the browser that you're in. And then they also own every conversation that you're having. And so when we think about applications inside ChatGPT and why it's interesting, from a distribution perspective, I suspect these numbers are just going to go up and up and up in terms of usage. And also, it's just going to get smarter and smarter. One of the things that they asked when we were onboarding into this is, can we access your browser data to improve your experience? And what they're doing is they're looking at your browser history, they're looking at the queries that you're doing, and then they're thinking about ways that they can further optimize what you're looking for. Now, when we then talk about applications, that's interesting, right? Because if they can understand all of your context, then they can better surface these kind of applications. And you need to sort of be aware of that data access to then think about how they surface stuff. There's a whole host of privacy issues. I've seen on X, people are sort of hating on that, right? They're going to understand all your data.
I
It's
see
a
they're
crazy amount
using
of
the
data.
word memories
Yeah, exactly. They use the word memories.
to try to make a cookie sound a little bit more, I
Yeah,
guess,
yeah.
sentimental.
Yeah, it's
So,
funny. It's funny. But anyway, I don't know what your first reactions to that is, Vince. I don't know if you've had a chance to try it yet. It only got released last night, so it's still very early.
my reaction is actually cool. I've tried a lot of agentic browsers and they've never really stuck. I think people have a huge loyalty to their browser. It's hard to get people to switch. That said, the the name brand ChatGPT is so big, right? And people are already putting so much of their workflows and Googling in ChatGPT that I think psychologically it's very intuitive to then be like, oh yeah, this should be a browser. So, I would expect this to do really well. Even I will probably spend some time playing around with it out of curiosity, but also could this genuinely elevate the browser experience? Um, because there is a huge overlap. There's no doubt about it. And it will be very interesting to kind of see how they have approached things like privacy and making the experience recognizable while also elevating it, right? We still need to be able to see websites. I think they had this experience, this one visual where they show, I don't know if you have it handy, like an e-commerce site, and then you can ask Chat, hey, I'm going to the beach. What things should I buy? I think that's a pretty poor example. I'm not sure people are going to use it that way. But I do think people will discover cool ways where they can play around with a browser and a ChatGPT interface natively without it always scraping, right? You have both on the same screen, which will make things easier.
Yeah, this made me really laugh. Like you can see, not even Sam Altman seems that
100%.
impressed by this service,
Yeah.
this release. Um, I can say
Just
from firsthand, I've been using Dia, which is the browser I'm in now. I don't know if you can see the full browser window, but this feature alone is awesome. I use it a ton. You know, you can do things like let's say I'm on a YouTube video, I can just directly ask it, create a summary of this video for me. Or you can ask, create me the transcript. And that's without it even being an agent. You can see here they've got full like agentic capability, and you can bring in multiple tabs. So I could say like analyze these 3 tabs, right? So that could be for your documents. There's a huge amount of interesting use cases here. And really that's happening is Dia, it's we're gonna see Dia's capabilities or Comet's capabilities be brought to hundreds of millions more people than they had access to. And so, yeah, I also saw like a really funny tweet this morning. I don't know if I can bring it up now, but let me see if I can find it. A couple of very funny tweets that I'll just share quickly. So this is one of them which really made me laugh, which is from the Perplexity CEO. Just said, just woke up. Did I miss anything? And I think it's going to be interesting, right? If you're Perplexity, how are you thinking about this? You have you are trying to go after the browser game. You would have invested a ton in it. You already need to try and find a way to compete with search queries, which you're currently leading in, but you've just diverted all of these resources away. And now, what's your advantage? I don't have a good reason as to why I would use Comet, and I'm more of a super user of Perplexity. And I don't know
one
if you have any
observation, like if ChatGPT gets a lot of users, things go well, things don't go well. Google and Gemini is in a really good position to just ship the features that do well in Chrome
yeah,
directly, right? So then why would anyone switch to ChatGPT? It almost feels like a beta testing for Chrome.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Is 100% true. I mean, that's basically what OpenAI has just done. which with like Dia and Comet. So it's a very good point. We might just see, Chrome release the
I really
features
think
that it
Chrome,
is
right? It takes
smart.
a lot for people to switch. There's still people
Yeah.
that use Internet Explorer since the 90s because like
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
they just cannot.
100%. And what maybe is quite smart about that from Google's perspective is, OpenAI have had to go first, but only people like us hear about this, right? It's going to be ages till people try and look at and switch to this kind of browser, at which point Google have had 3, 6 months of development time to basically create these features. And so they'll just copy the ones that are working best, and actually makes you think a lot about how it's potentially a very smart play. I'll also share this, which I think is really prominent. This is, a meme saying, every YC founder right now, basically off the back of this launch. And I think, again, a really pressing point. When you're thinking about what you're going to build, if you're going to build large capabilities that, well, maybe I'd frame it. OpenAI is going for a wider picture, and maybe they're developing too much. They've got their agent mode, they've got their apps SDK, they're going down the browser route, they're trying to dominate, obviously, ChatGPT as a product. They're also looking at domain expertise. They're working heavily in finance right now. They're employing like 100 different people from finance just to help them to build like custom data within the query. I think that's what it is. So they are, yeah, there's going to be a lot of evolution in this space. And when you're thinking about applications, the more that you can focus on a niche and develop within a specific area, the better. And so I think, yeah, worth noting when you're thinking about, what you're building and how you're going to compete. I think these LLM companies are going to go after quite a range of use cases.
You know how the Atlas search works? Is it their own? It's not a Google search.
What do you mean?
If you type in a query, like, I don't know, um, Elon Musk net worth, right?
Mm.
Google will instantly show you 20 results, and you pick one, right? Here in Atlas, you're first going to get a ChatGPT experience, right? Like an answer. And then you have search and you just have links.
Yeah.
I think it is Google, right?
Yeah, I don't think they built it on Chromium.
Oh, yeah, it is Google, but they kind of wrap it in their own UI.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They built it on Chromium. They're not rebuilt kind of like the whole indexing or anything like that. So um
Yeah, a lot of pressure to substantiate their half a trillion valuation.
yeah, exactly.
So they do
And then I
have
think final.
extensions in Atlas.
Mm.
So there is an extension just like Chrome. So that means, there's an opportunity now to think about what kind of extensions make sense in an AI, if we can call it an AI native browser. I'm not sure we can, but a browser that has an LLM deeply integrated.
Definitely.
Because I can imagine
Definitely.
the extension then also will have access to the chat, the ongoing chats you see in your browser. So there's an interesting
Okay.
opportunity to, think about what kind of like apps, like like the Honey app, very 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 well known extension that does affiliate links and coupons, right? Could that
Mhm.
could that be something that then needs to be rethought and brought to Atlas in a new type of experience?
Yeah, I think it's a very good point. And yeah, I think it's a very good point. One other topic that I wanted to discuss today was actually just taking a step back and comparing what we're seeing with apps in ChatGPT with the App Store. And we had this discussion, I think it was yesterday, Vince, which is, how big is this and how big a surface area is this for, opportunities for development? And maybe to tee this up, and then I'm interested to hear you talk about it. You've been, the one developing so far on this. What happened with the iPhone is that it was a new application and distribution channel, but it was also an entirely new interface. And that meant that there is whole new sort of, you could call it, ways of like activities that are done or ways of using that particular platform that was a large amount more divergent than what we've seen within ChatGPT. So ChatGPT apps, there is a diversion of the way that they're used, i.e., like until now, you are not interacting broadly with apps by prompting. So we have seen a divergence of activity, but the interface, the experience is not drastically different. A lot of the use cases that we've seen so far, particularly obviously from the existing apps that have been built, they are effectively the browser or what you would do on a website just within chat. And then you're just sort of interacting with that browser. So I'm interested to get your perspective on this, Vince, when you compare the two, and then maybe we could just talk about how how to think that from an opportunity perspective. Who does it benefit? Who does it not? I.e., is it just use? Is this good for incumbents? Is there much opportunity for startups to innovate there if the use cases are more just take the existing stuff that's working and enable it as an application within chat?
More importantly, there's no new technical platform that companies or brands that want to play with the OpenAI app space have to think about. These are just little web interfaces that essentially are packaged in a way that ChatGPT understands. And importantly, you have to package them in a way, and this is the wide topic about discoverability, in a way that ChatGPT knows to show them. But there's no new coding language. There is no new, like technical foundations that a developer would need to learn to build an app that can be used by Apps SDK. Any full stack developer could easily build them. So that means you do already have, I don't know how many JavaScript developers there are in the world, a couple million people that could quite easily create these kinds of apps. So expect also a lot of apps. The barrier is quite low. So that will make the experience and the the user, like value for these apps more important. In what moments and what use cases do people really want to have an external app, like, a gradient tweet creator, or, something from a brand that they like, or something that is useful, like, I don't know, like Zillow, right, is an example for home searches, or maybe like you're booking airplane tickets, you want to see like an Expedia experience. What kind of experiences do people want? And the kind of the serving the data, that's not challenging, right? So it's going to really be like discovering the user experience and having the LLM discover that that experience should be served, right? So when you think actually about like these memories in the browser, I could imagine this is something that becomes important to kind of personalize what apps that user interacts with and what kind of interfaces that app can serve into a chat to kind of make the user like predict what the user wants to see, right? So I can imagine, just like with Google really knows and learns about your browsing activity and personalizes your web experiences. ChatGPT will do something very similar, and the Apps SDK will kind of be one tool in their toolkit to kind of highly personalize your experience.
Yeah, totally. And Joel, what I think is going to be interesting to see is as we saw with AEO and understanding how stuff was starting to surface within AI, there was this whole debate around, is this a net new thing or is this just SEO, just a wrapper on SEO? And in short, it's pretty close to just a wrapper on SEO, except there's just new ways in which you need to appear to then, because those links are more prominent, like Reddit. I'm going to be very interested to see whether this is definitely a net new, a massive distribution opportunity for existing players. What's going to be interesting is this actually sort of a really big opportunity for new use cases like the App Store was, or is it more kind of like existing use cases and more a game of AEO? Yeah, everyone's going to have an app. Everyone's going to need to appear there. The experience is going to be pretty similar to what we currently know. And actually, the game is more just about optimizing, being found, and playing the metadata game. They even have it in their documents, right? So interesting to frame the thinking
It,
around it.
One thought is, right now, because it's not that challenging to create a web interface that interacts with ChatGPT. One thought is that ChatGPT may create a platform where essentially any web page on the internet can be created like on the fly into a chat app, right? So like let's say you have a page and you're selling, vintage shoes, right? Why do you actually need to create a ChatGPT app when ChatGPT can scrape your website and essentially just create a fitting view that works in their UI, right? So they've essentially created the ChatGPT app for you.
Yeah. Doesn't seem, yeah. It's an interesting idea, and I think potentially just a matter of time. It's not technically too difficult, right? So
It's really just kind of consuming the internet and maybe adding a little bit of their own wrapper around it and serving it essentially as a browser, right? Inside
mhm.
a chat interface.
Yeah. And I think this also talks to how when they're releasing this new browser, how is all of this really going to surface? Because if you are already operating within ChatGPT and you're doing a search query within their browser, then they're still incentivized for the app to appear. There's benefits of the app to appear within your chat window, but they got to then think about, okay, like when are we okay with it just being sort of like natively within another tab? Is that actually a better experience? When do we want to bring in an app within chat? They're going to have to think about these use cases. And so,
Thinking more out loud, right? Like, so something if you're like selling vintage shoes, I think very easy to just scrape your website and show it right into ChatGPT. Something like, hey, I'm interested in buying a house in this zip code, right? It's a bit more difficult, right? You'd want to directly uh query the server of Zillow, right? And you'd want like a direct connection. So I think it will really depend on the use case whether there's like this custom developed ChatGPT app or not.
yeah. And we're probably going to see, depending on the browser that you use, how they tailor the experience. Because the way I've been thinking about this is you could have any app. And this is right now, the apps we're seeing are the worst the apps are ever going to be in ChatGPT. And so the reason why they wanted to build these apps is to keep people in their ecosystem. But if you're already in the ecosystem, let's say you have a more complex sort of internet experience. Let's say you're looking for a home, but Zillow made that quite useful. So maybe it's more you're shopping for some like very complex infrastructure software, right? And you need to just be on their website and understand all the different components. If you're in Chrome, Google Chrome, they want to have the application there and you to not leave it, right? So they're incentivized to basically make this app, i.e., website, as best as possible. And you can imagine it expanding open and people being able to then see this full browser. But if you are in OpenAI's browser, then why expand it out and keep you in this chat window, which is effectively a limited experience? They can just open up a new tab. So you might even see OpenAI and ChatGPT using different experiences depending on if you're in their browser versus that. That covers everything. We went through a lot there. Very interested to hear what people have, well, what people are thinking and have to say in the comments. We also have our Ghost Team community where we are actively talking a lot about apps in ChatGPT, the experience there and the future of development. So if you're a brand, you're a startup, you're an executive, you're thinking about apps in ChatGPT, join us. We'll provide a link where you can apply to join in the comments. It's a community that we review every applicant and make sure that it's incredibly high quality group. So yeah, join us in the conversation, and we're doing these demos every week. So we will see you next time.
See you next week.